Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, June 30th, 2019. This is a meeting of the Public Safety. I am the chair, Dan Bresnahan. To my right is Councilor Terry Murphy. Also in the audience is Councilor Juan Anderson Burgos and Councilor Linda Vacon, as well as various department heads and representatives of departments. I appreciate everybody coming in. Take a motion to take item 1 off the table.
So moved.
Item 1 is ordered by Councilor Murphy, order that the mayor, the law department, police chief, building commissioner, board of health director, and any other parties that might help in a discussion for the city to take action against the owner of the following properties: 173 Elm Street, 365 Appleton Street, and 556 South Bridge Street. The properties appear to be owned by the same landlord and rate the highest number of police calls for residential properties in the city. Anybody that's going to impact, come on up. Please. I'm sorry? Okay, that's fine. Hey.
Yeah. We got mics over here too, so.
Yep.
Thank you all for coming, appreciate it. So if I can, Mr. Chair, talk about.
Of course.
So
Councilor Murphy.
again, you know, this is, well, one of the buildings is in Ward 2, and I've had a number of constituents complaining about the building. The other one is a building that Councilor Bresnahan and I had filed an order, and we got a report from the planning department, and 173 Elm was at 10 times the number of administrative calls as any other building in the city. They're both, to my knowledge, they're both owned by the same person. We've got 556 South Bridge Street is near the Valley Arena Park, which is scheduled for a grand opening tomorrow. And I want kids to be able to go there and feel comfortable. And so I don't know what we can do, but I wanted to get all the parties together to put together as an aggressive a plan as possible to make those areas safer for everyone in the neighborhood, including the tenants in the buildings. So that's the purpose of the order. I appreciate your input and whatever suggestions you might make. So I'll leave that open to whoever would like to offer initial comments. I know from, from the police report, those buildings were number 1 and number 2 in police calls as well. So we had building commissioner, health department calls, and now we've got police department calls, and those buildings tend to be at the top of the list consistently.
So I did meet with Captain Pratt. I've been in talks with Sean Gonsalves from our Board of Health. We have a plan of attack, at least, to start dealing with these properties. We did reach out about a week ago to start gathering the police calls and that information. Captain Pratt was great at getting us the letters that have gone out to the owner regarding these properties. What we used to do back in 2015, we used to send red letters or nuisance letters. Basically, there's a statute that says if you have a nuisance and there's drug activity, we require you to abate that nuisance, whether that be eviction or if these people maybe don't live there, to find some way to keep that activity away from the building. So we're gonna reinstate those policies. We've gathered the letters that have been sent, and we'll compile those into, basically it's a final notice letter that says he needs to follow some steps. It's my understanding, and Captain Pratt can speak a little bit to this, that in the past he has had security cameras and police detail done there, and we would be asking for something similar. It sounds like it made an impact back then, and we'll see if it works now and kind of go from there. As far as code complaints, there really haven't been a lot there, so as far as bringing something in housing court, it may not make as much sense. We'd come under this other statute instead and look about filing it in district or superior court, wherever that needs to go. So we do have a plan here. We're gonna see how it pans out over the next couple weeks, but these things, they do take some time, and we'll see if we can get some progress that way.
Thank you. Captain Pratt, you want to embellish? I know I heard there was some, I saw a comment about statistics that I wouldn't believe or something to that effect.
Okay. I just went back till July 1st to the present. Mm-hmm. Calls for service at just Elm and Appleton, which is actually 3 buildings. the two on Elm Street and around the corner at 365. There were 464 calls for service. There was 126 arrests, 13 shots fired calls, and this number might be off a little. I have 3 search warrants that I could find on short notice that I know we've executed. There's been other search warrants done and plenty of arrests out of there. There's also there was a shooting that took place in the Circle K parking lot, but the party involved in that was from the Elm and Appleton Street building, so it's all connected.
And the South Bridge Street one.
South Bridge Street, I have stats for there too. So the total calls for service there were 149 calls for service, approximately 31 arrests. That's probably a low number based on arrests that were actually made there. There's a lot more arrests that are made after people leave there and get, the numbers can be skewed because if you stop somebody that's came from the building and they're 3 blocks over, that's where the call will get logged as opposed to where it actually took place. So, but I mean, we made arrests there today, so it's active.
No, I appreciate, again, I think it emphasizes the need for us to take aggressive action and make sure that, I don't have a problem with the landlord making money, but I have a problem with the landlord if he's gonna make money and not provide a safe environment for people to live in, for kids to play in and all that. So I appreciate the efforts, and I appreciate the statistics I got are kind of what fired me up to put this order in, because again, I've had people, and I know the dedication tomorrow, I've had people tell me I'm not so sure I want my kid there. And I had a meeting in South Holyoke a few weeks ago, and a 10-year-old said to me, "Can you make the neighborhood safe?" When a 10-year-old has to tell you that's, we got issues that we got to deal with, and that was the primary building they were pointing at. There were others, but obviously that was a primary building, so I appreciate that. Sean, are you fired?
Yeah, I would say from a code enforcement standpoint, these buildings are actually pretty low in the volume of calls. We've been at 173 or 365 Appleton. We've had 2 calls since 2014. At 556 South Bridge, there's been 8 calls since 2014. Most recently, there were some issues in the back, and they responded right away. Typically, with buildings that are in distress like this, there's usually a higher volume of calls, but I don't know if it's well managed inside or if people don't want inspectors in the building, but this is fairly low when it comes to a building of this size. So we don't have a large record of complaints or issues at the building.
Was the 556 South Bridge about the dumpster?
And there's a jet ski hull and some
Yeah,
other things
okay.
there, and they removed that as well as we had that whole area cleaned up.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought, oh, that's a good sign, but then I got the other complaints related to some other issues.
Yeah, I would be cautious, and we talked to Crystal about this, about going in and trying to do like a unit by unit inspection, because that can actually, if he were to try to evict, you can actually slow that process down. So I would say it might be better to go through like an administrative way than try to go through a code enforcement way. Oh, sorry, because you might end up making the process a little more convoluted.
My goal is to make the process as smooth as possible and as effective as possible, as quickly as possible.
How you doing? Yeah, we did a survey of 5 years for the incidents there, starting back in 2014 all the way to the present time. In that 365 Appleton Street, 173 and 177 Elm Street, there was 153 calls.
And that's from when?
From 2014, from 6 of 2014 to now, to 6 of 2019. There, within those calls, there were 3 building fires, 2 dumpster fires, and 1 cooking fire. And also 556 South Bridge Street, there was 18 total incidents on there. 2 dumpster fires, 1 vehicle fire. And I will also want to add that it's not on here, but he also, the owner of the property also owns 50 West Street, which encompasses 41 and 43 Mosier. And there was actually 30 total incidents there, and one dumpster fire and one cooking fire. And in that building there, 50 West Street, 41 and 43 Mosier, we're in the process right now of having them install an alarm system in there, monitored alarm system.
Okay, is that a 6-unit, 8-unit? Yeah.
That, because it's the whole unit, so it's all in one. 50 West Street, 41 Mosier, and 43 Mosier, it's all one
Connected,
unit.
yeah,
So there's 25 units in all.
okay. It would, so in effect, though, we're talking, the first one, you're talking about an average of 30 calls to the fire department.
Yes.
A year, which I would assume is a pretty high number of calls.
Yeah, yes, it is. I mean, there's buildings here that we haven't even gone into for false alarms. So, and to get 153 out of one building, it's a lot.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, Crystal, real quick, if this final letter goes out, I'm sure receivers have been appointed to properties, not only because they're dilapidated, but also because of the dangerousness of the buildings, perhaps. I mean, do you know of any properties that have been taken over? I mean, he's obviously an absentee landlord. I think he lives in, I'm pretty sure he lives in Holyoke, but, I mean, do you think there's and I'm just looking for an opinion, I'm not gonna hold you to it. Do you think there's a way to, if he doesn't clean up his act, through the court system, get someone appointed to clean up the act?
So, receiverships generally, I think, go through code because you're looking at someone to come in and fix up a building. Granted, we don't know what the inside of these look like. As Sean mentioned, and as I'm sure you're aware, dealing with property management and such, if we get in and find code violations, then these tenants have more to stand on so that they don't have to be evicted should we push him that route. But I think because the statute is so well written for nuisance issues, it's probably better to go that route than to try and put a receiver in there because you can get fines, you can force the building to be vacated, things of that nature. So I'd rather go that route first, and then maybe in the process, once we get it vacated, at least for the tenants that are causing the issues, maybe then we bring it in for code issues and work that way. I mean, we can simultaneously do that too. So, but I mean, if we can get security beefed up over there again and that resolves some of this issue, then, assuming everybody's happy over there and the code issues are non-existent and the crime rate comes down, then that's the result we want to see. And if we do it for 30, 60, or 90 days, and then we kind of monitor along and then maybe reinstate the order if it becomes an issue again. But I'd rather...
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking the receiver would just be a different presence, but we'd still want the police detail there, I think, is really what's going to push the crime activity down, not just having a different property manager.
So,
Go ahead.
and just going back, because was it about 3 or 4 years ago that we had a police presence on the Appleton and Elm Street site? 4 years ago?
Yes.
And they were there for quite a while, I'm gonna say several months.
Yes.
And is that paid for by the landlord, I'm assuming?
It was partially paid for by the landlord, partially supplemented by our budget.
Okay. And when that detail ended, were we at that point, I guess there were 2 questions. Number one, obviously I think we must have removed some people that were a bad element.
Yes.
And number 2, I wonder if we remove the bad element, if we end up getting more calls for building or health code violations once people feel more comfortable. My understanding, and I only have people telling me this as third parties, is that there's a fear of going to report violations because of they report the violation and then the police end up being involved and they feel like they're in trouble. So, I mean, I want to make sure that we get to that point, and if it's the police, then I think that is probably the way it's got to go in both cases. But then eventually, I'd like to get a history. If we in fact did it, were we good for the next year, 2 years? And I don't think South Bridge Street was part of that original thing. It was just Elm Street and Appleton Street, correct? So, is there any history on that you can talk about, anybody?
I mean, we've given you the stats for the last 5 years, so you can see how it's increased since the police detail went away. As far as, when that point started, it's It's hard to say.
Well, again, I would encourage, and I probably appreciate all your input, and I would definitely encourage the city to be as aggressive as we are allowed to be, and work to make, nobody should live in an area where they don't feel safe. And nobody should have to live in an area where they don't feel safe, so. And if we have to make life inconvenient for others to do that, then, I'm all for that. And I appreciate the input, and I really want to emphasize is that we do this as quickly as we can, that we move on this process as quickly as we can, and that we don't let it procrastinate. And keep it going as long as we have to. And I would also encourage that a landlord trying to improve the quality of life in their buildings should be paying a substantial, if not the entire portion of the extra details. But whatever is necessary to make our citizens and our kids safer, I'm all for it. So thank you very much.
Crystal, is it feasible for us to send notice to the landlord that says an inspection is going to take place on such and such a date of the interior of the property?
We could, but like I mentioned, if part of this process is him needing to evict some of these tenants, if we find code violations, then they're gonna have a basis to postpone their eviction, and we don't want that. So ideally, it's better if we can get it vacant to then go in and see how much we can get as far as inspections go.
And would he be on the hook to relocate the families? Or was that something we would have to do?
I don't know if he would be on the hook to relocate, and the city is never required to relocate in that situation. Assuming he is told to evict these people, and I'm trying not to get into too much strategy because I'd rather that
No, I get it. I
we
understand.
deal with it behind the scenes, but I would ensure that somebody could be there for these eviction cases and find out what's happening to these people after the fact. Because the issue is we don't want this to be a moving target either. He owns many buildings in the city, and there's ways to play the system, and we don't want that to happen.
Swing by Stop and Shop. He's in this. He's scratching scratch tickets as we speak. I can guarantee it.
Could I just ask one more question related to West Street? So is that also a property that the police end up having to go to quite a bit, or?
I didn't bring stats for 50 West, but it was the exact same scenario up until recently with I think the code stuff he had going on, but we were down there all the time. Same, probably, I would guess the very
Same
similar
kind of
numbers
statistics,
if I
okay.
were to look them up.
So again, whatever we can do in all of the cases where obviously they're bad properties in terms of what's happening and in terms of quality of life. So whatever we can do, I certainly appreciate it, and I appreciate all of your input.
That one up so he can come.
So the reason why we ended up at 50 West Street was because we were called down there from the PD. So I don't know what the extent, what they ended up doing down there, but they found some code violations, and therefore we ended up going down there. And when we did our inspection and all that, this is what we found there.
No, I appreciate it, and that adds to the agenda.
On that note as well, actually, we have an inspector down there, I believe today or yesterday at 50 West doing a thorough inspection of the exterior and the common areas too for compliance, because we've had a few complaints, and I think there was a larger issue there as well. So we're all there.
Okay, thank you.
We have a different strategy for 50 West Street happening now.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to note that Mike Sullivan, city councilor, is here as well, and Damien Cody, the building commissioner, who, if he has something he wants to add to this conversation.
This is just about Elm Street and South Bridge, correct? Sorry, I was a little bit late. So in these, I just did a quick review of our records, and they've been pretty quiet in terms of complaints, believe it or not. So one of the, like South Bridge Street, I know it's been in the news a lot for probably police activity, but we've only had a complaint. Last one was 2012, and they did comply with the egress certification in 2017. That's good for 5 years. The other one is out of compliance. We did send a notice. So in terms of this type of use, we inspect these every 5 years. So they're due for us to do a walkthrough of the whole building, one right now and the other one very soon. And at that time, we'll get a look at, what's going on. If there's anything, we pick up on it then.
So based on Crystal's comments, I coordinate that so that we're not we're concerned about doing an inspection and then we end up having a harder time getting rid of people that we really want to get rid of. So I just, whatever, certainly I want, whenever we get that building cleared, I certainly want to make sure it's safe for people to live in, but I want to make sure we don't end up doing one good thing, and because we did that thing, we ended up not being able to do the other thing, so. And I know it's a complicated process, but,
I mean, just to reiterate, we all meet, the building commissioner, Board of Health, and the law department. We meet once a week, I mean, at 2 o'clock every Wednesday, and people are welcome to appear. I know Councilor Murphy's shown up once or twice. We have special appearances by the AG's office, or if we need to talk to a landlord, we've called them in and had all of us meet. But we're all in constant contact of properties and inspections and court cases and everything like that. So we definitely coordinate with each other.
and I thank you for that, but I'm a little surprised you didn't say I was a special visitor, but it's okay.
Yeah, you're special, Terry.
There you go. I'll make a motion, the order has been complied with, that the city is planning on taking action.
Can you just update at least him and us down the road as to like any prognosis or how we're getting further along with this?
Yeah, if you don't hear from me, feel free to file an order to review.
Yeah, thank you.
Was it reasonable that somewhere around September, we should have some kind of idea that this is what's going to be happening?
I would think September, we should definitely at least have some sort of communication happening, if nothing
Okay.
else.
Okay, thank you.
Make a-
Make a motion that's been complied with.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to take out of order item 14 so we can, well, first of all, I believe we're all set with the police. Just for, I know there's a lot of DPW stuff here. This next order should take care of fire and health as well, and building. The police? Okay. All right, well, let's take item 2 out of order, and then we can have the police vacant.
You're not allowed to leave. Make a motion to take item 2.
All in favor? All right.
Aye.
Thank you. Order that the law department give a legal opinion as to whether or not panhandlers can be prevented from standing on the islands in the middle of the traffic due to safety issues.
So we've had, the police have come in before, that's why I kept Captain Pratt here, we talked a little bit about it in our last meeting. There's not much we can do here. It's a First Amendment right that they can be there, even safety issues, assuming that they're not jumping around through traffic, impeding the flow of traffic. Just like you can have a sign there that's on a wooden stake, they can stand there and hold it as well. We've kind of gone through the ringer with panhandling, and we really haven't found it out. We've talked to other municipalities. There's really not much we can do. They have a First Amendment right to be there just like anybody else. It's a supply and demand issue. If we can cut the supply, the demand will go away. We had talked about a draft order about dealing with the cars themselves, that, people need to stop handing things out of their cars on a public way. So that'll avoid the sudden stops at green lights. They could pull off to the side of the road and bring them food or money or whatever they choose to do, but it would hopefully stop some of the traffic impediment that happens with that. That kind of went to the wayside when we had this up in council probably a year ago, maybe 6 months ago. But I can, like Captain Pratt, speak to the laws at least, but as far as anything the law department can do or ordinances, we can't do anything about the panhandling without running into a First Amendment issue.
Yep, she's right on. That's, I don't know what we can really do. And again, if they were what we would call aggressive panhandling, we could perhaps under, a disorderly conduct type of thing if it's causing the traffic to stop. But most of our guys, if you spend any time watching them, they just stand there like that with the sign, and they don't really approach until somebody hands something out the window. And it's usually, I'd say the majority of the time, it's at red light time is when that happens. So traffic is already stopped. They're usually back out of the way and back to their perch by the time the light turns green. So I'm sure there's rare occasions where the light turns green and it might stop momentarily, but from what we've seen and where our hands are kind of tied.
Councilor Bacon?
Thanks. I just have a question for Crystal relative to the new signs that we did put up to encourage people to use the recognized charities. And I don't know if you were sent them, but I was sent photos of the signs being covered and otherwise interfered with. And I'm wondering if we have a way to at least enforce that the signage not be interfered with.
I mean, not really. It depends if that's what you want to use your police force to deal with, trying to enforce that, but you're not gonna, it's like anything else. It's trying to stop the graffiti. I mean, we could have an ordinance that you can't put graffiti up, or there's laws you can't put graffiti up, but you're not gonna stop.
Right, but I just wondered if we had anything in our current ordinance that prohibits the defacement or removing or covering or otherwise interfering with signage. I mean, if we are gonna take as a community the approach that, you know, why have an ordinance because we can't do anything about it, then we should just get rid of a whole bunch of ordinances. I mean, if we're just making them just to fill up a book. But I'm just wondering if we have anything that makes a statement relative to that at all.
I don't know of anything in our ordinance, but I know there's laws against defacing, you know, government property and things of that nature. It's just, are you catching them doing it?
Exactly. Well, it's like all the things, whether they're going in the road or not, which we know they are, but you have to see them doing it, I guess, from a police point of view. Thanks.
Yes. So can I ask one question on that?
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry.
Through the chair to legal. So let me ask this question. Isn't it illegal to cover a miles per hour sign?
I believe so. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head.
So that would be considered a public sign. So the sign that Linda Bacon was referring to is also a public sign. So isn't it illegal to do so? You cannot cover signs that are public. So
Right,
I'm
but-
wondering if we can enforce that.
Well, again, it's you got to catch them doing it. It's the same way graffiti shows up all the time. You can't put graffiti out either, but you got to catch them doing it, and you have to enforce it at that time. I mean, you can't show up and a sign's covered and now hunt down the person who did it. It's just, yeah.
Wow. That's it. I'm done.
I get what you're saying there, Crystal, but to Councilor Bacon's point, this isn't somebody permanently covering up. What they're doing is, while they're standing there panhandling, they're taking their sweatshirt or a jacket and putting it up over the sign to cover it so the motorists can't see it, all right? And they're standing right there doing it. This is not compared with graffiti where it's done and gone. So I think there is something. Any police officer in his routine patrol sees something like that, they should do something about it. That's number one. Number two, I have spent over the last 2 weeks quite a few hours going around. The signs have helped tremendously, and I've talked to some of the business owners, in particular up at the Seatown up at Northampton and Hamden Street. He says there used to be 7 or 8 working it, and as we've noticed, in shifts. Now there's only 1 person working that site. So, yeah, is there still a panhandler there? Yes, but it's decreased dramatically. I've talked to some of the firefighters over at the station on Northampton Street. The amount going on there has decreased dramatically because of these signs. And the thing I'd also suggest now is if there's some way we can get it is working. It's not making the problem going away, but it is having an effect. It's having a visible effect. And maybe we can get some up on the medians as well, because it is a supply and demand thing, and as it becomes less lucrative, there's less participation in it also.
So
I'll defer. Go ahead.
I just have one more question. So if a police officer or some other official of the city happens to be driving by and sees the situation that Councilor Sullivan just described of the shirt hanging over covering the sign or whatever, does a city official have the authority to remove the thing that's blocking the sign? Or does it have to be a police officer? Or, you know, who could remediate the situation if it is observed and they're there? Who would have the ability legally to correct that?
I mean, the correction you're looking for, so say they have a coat hanging on it, the police officer's gonna walk up and
to
say,
uncover-
can you uncover that?
Well-
Drive away and it goes right back up. This is
Well,
a
no,
moving target.
I'm just asking, who, would it have to be a police officer that would take the covering off the sign?
I mean,
Say it's left hanging there and nobody's there.
Not necessary. This is a weird situation. I mean, you could have anybody ask them to take it down. If they get violent, obviously you're going to want a police officer there. You don't know that they are going to be violent about it. They're, like I said, it's,
Well,
if
right,
they're
but my
hanging a
que-
coat or if they're covering a sign, anybody can ask them to take it down. An officer's going to ask them to take it down. They're going to do it. They're going to drive away. Nobody's going to stand there all day and watch these signs.
Right. But what my question is can somebody else take it down? I mean, it's not, they aren't giving permission. They're doing something illegal. So could any other person take it down if it's a violation of the law that it's there?
It would be like anybody cleaning up trash in the city. I mean, it's
Gotcha.
not.
So, yes, anybody could.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Thanks.
Just, the concept of this is not so much the guy standing on the sidewalk with a sign. The concept is that now we have people standing on the island with traffic's going in both directions. And because you're of the opinion, and I respect that even though they're standing on an island with traffic going in both directions at a high rate of speed, I could put a chair out there and sit there and just wave to people, right? And you could do whatever you wanted on these islands in the middle of traffic. Now, I shouldn't say anything you wanted, but in this vein of panhandling, I could sit on an island that the city owns and watch the traffic zip by me all day, not necessarily asking for anything, just I could sit there and stand there, dance there as long as it was appropriate.
To the best of our knowledge, and we looked into this last time we had the police department in there, there's no law that says they can't stand there.
Can you do me a favor, in your research, can you look at, see if there was any arrest for panhandlers in the city of Ludlow? And see if there's any sort of ordinance that they have crafted or are crafting that is already on the books or to be on the books with this matter?
I can look into Ludlow,
That'd
certainly.
be perfect, thank you.
Can I just make one?
Council Murphy.
Yeah, someone suggested this to me today, and they actually showed me pictures, and almost every panhandler is right at the red light. So what they showed me, and I'm not sure where this facility was, but basically they planted a 3-foot high, covered the entire island, so that if the panhandler, and then they had a very small support network, and the rest of it was a garden. If we were to do something like that, I'm going to assume, number one, that they can't stand in the road in Panhandle. That would be illegal from a safety standpoint, I would assume. You don't have freedom of speech to make other people unsafe. And then the other part would be if it's high enough and we can move them away from the red light, according with Councilor Sullivan's thoughts, you are making it much less productive in terms of the results you're getting, because if you're 2 or 3 or 4 cars away from where they stopped, and in order to get away from the planted 3-foot high island, whatever we're going to call it, we'd be in that situation. And so I'm assuming if they were in the road panhandling, that would be a safety violation that would trigger more than just you can't do that.
Yes, if they were in the road, I guess we'd have some teeth behind it if they were in the road and blocking traffic. But I can tell you that if you put up a bunch of plants, you better get a lot of them, because they're just gonna move to another street.
Yeah. But there are streets that are better to be at. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I mean, I will say, I kind of get what you're getting at, but you have to watch when you start crafting ordinances and crafting these things. You can also look at intent of why these things are happening too. And if you're impeding free speech, that can also be an issue, whether it's intentional, whether it's on the record that that's the way that it was looked at. So, if we started there were issues where, and I can't remember the state off the top of my head, but they were putting spikes under overpasses, and that was an issue. So if you start planting 3-foot trees everywhere again, and you don't know where these medians are, you possibly can't put a 3-foot tree there. Maybe that, speaks to the line of sight for drivers. But it's one of those things that you have to tread very lightly. And at the end of the day, if they're not being aggressive and they're standing there, maybe
But, so I guess if we remove the islands, that would technically they'd be standing in the street, right?
well, you don't see them standing in the middle of like the crosshatched lines in a street. You see
Oh,
them
right, but I mean,
standing
we don't
on-
need an island to put a sign in. I mean, a lot of these islands just have a sign in, like, so, I mean, we could remove we wouldn't do it, but theoretically, we could just remove the islands, and then they would technically be standing in the street.
Theoretically, if you want to raise some funds to do that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, Linda?
If there's anybody here on this issue who could just give an opinion as to why you think some communities have so many panhandlers and why other communities have so few when the law is the same. What do you think is the difference from one to another?
And we have a pretty dense downtown area, and I think that supports, especially with the one-way streets, you have like sort of a grid where people are stopping at very regular intervals.
'Cause of all
And
the
so I think
lights.
that facilitates a number of panhandlers where other communities don't have frequent street-to-street stops like we do. And I think that that's one of the contributing factors is the way that the roads are designed downtown.
So get rid of streetlights and islands, is that?
And traffic lights.
All right, thank you, Crystal.
Make a motion,
Thanks.
the order's been complied with.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Captain. Mike, can you maybe put the air on a little bit, buddy? Thanks. Take item 14. Yeah.
Make a motion, we take item 14 off.
So moved. Item 14 is an order that the committee reviewing the status of dangerous buildings provide the city council a report of all buildings now marked with a red X, including ownership and if there were plans for those buildings in the near future. Also, if possible, an estimate it would cost to demolish each of these buildings.
So again, I filed this order, you know, I've been looking at red X's for a long time, and I just filed this order to get a status report, but also to see if we have plans for something, I'm fine with that. But if we don't have plans and and we know the buildings are in tough shape and the fire department, we will not send someone in there to fight a fire. Then at some point, we've got to make a decision, you know, let's do what we have to take them down. Now, I know we spent probably $150,000 to $200,000 a year on demolition. I mean, if we're doing that and we know we've got 20 buildings that have to come down, and we were able to bond and pay $200,000 out of a bond, but get the buildings down in a year or two as opposed to getting them down in 10 years, the city's image is far improved. So that's one of my goals, and I don't know what the answer to it is, but it's the question I'm asking. So how many red X buildings do we have? Are there red X buildings that we expect to have renovated or rehabilitated? And if not, what is the strategy in terms of demolition? Damien, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. In terms of the list of the buildings that have a slash or red X, that would probably be maintained by the fire department, because they're the ones that, while I can write a letter saying to the fire chief, and I do this from time to time, to have one installed, I suggest it. Ultimately, the fire chief's the one that says, okay, let's do this. And the DPW installs them for them. So I'm not sure of the list. You know, in terms of the problem property group, the system is that we're looking at these and giving them some sort of a rating, for better or worse, to which one's the most unsafe, and all the way down to ones that aren't so unsafe, but they are problems for other reasons. So we've been systematically working on these for years. I mean, it's for 100 years, right? But through this group collectively. We do have a plan for all of them. I think to determine which ones are past the point of no return and come up with a number, that's something I think we'd have to work on. We'd, get a spreadsheet together and say, hey, these are the ones that we just know have to come down. There's probably no realistic hope for them, but we've tried things like auctioning or RFPing properties where we don't think maybe they're not viable. But in the meantime, if we don't have the funding to take them down, why not see if somebody else maybe wants it for whatever reason, even to demo it, to have the lot because they're in a butter. This is, I'm kind of going through this list here of the vacant buildings that I have from 10 years ago and updating it, which also has slashes and X's on the pictures. And this is previous to me, but it's about 10 years, and looking through it, half of these have been demolished. So the ones with X's, with slashes, or with nothing at all, we've taken them down. So I think we've made some progress, but for what you're asking for, I think we need to do a little work and get back to you on it.
Yeah, no, and I know we've made some progress. My goal is that if we know we're not going to be able to rehabilitate a building, and we know it's an eyesore, and we know it's bringing down the value in the neighborhoods, that, I would much rather say if I have to borrow several $1 million and pay back $200,000 a year out of a bond and get rid of 10 or 12 or 15 buildings, whatever it is, and it could be more or less. But, I know, and I can go back to Mayor Sullivan, I can go back to Mayor Prue, but I can go back to Mayor Sullivan and Mayor Pluta and Mayor Morris, all where I've brought buildings to their attention that have come down, but they could have come down prior to and would have made a difference in the neighborhood. So, can either of you give me a report on the red X's?
Excuse me. I'm not ready for that one yet, because I don't have it on my list, and I must have left it on the printer. But the only thing I can say is that we do, obviously, everybody knows we don't go into the buildings with the red X's, but the only time we do is if we're told that somebody's in there. And with the homeless population in here, that's possible. So I myself would like to see that those buildings come down as quick as possible. But as far as numbers goes, I would have to get back to you on the numbers, because I'm
Okay.
don't have any numbers right now.
Could you do that
Yes.
and send it back to the committee or to me or vice or both?
Absolutely.
Because I would like to know how many are, and I do know, and I know we had 28 Cabot Street, and I had some people.
That was just recently.
Which was
right?
just a
Yeah.
recent fire, but I did have, and it was a vacant building, but I know there were people that told me there were people in there.
Right.
And I know that they were trying to search and make sure there wasn't anybody there. But, those are the kind of things that, by leaving buildings, and as much as we try to secure them, we just can't keep up with people trying to unsecure the security. So, again, both from living in the neighborhood, having a kid in that neighborhood, and trying to project a positive image in that neighborhood, all those kind of things are reflected in that. And when people drive, and I used to work at Holyoke Community College, and I used to have people that drive through Holyoke, and they would constantly tell me, but look at what you got. And they're now talking about the good things we had. They were talking about the boarded up buildings and the vacant lots and all those kind of things. So that's what I'm trying to clear up. I think our image changes dramatically when people drive by and they see things being constructed, lots being maintained, all those kind of things. So if you can send me that list, I would appreciate it. And Sean, I know you had comments.
Yeah, we have been focusing our efforts on a lot of those red X buildings. Those have been the priority. We try to rate buildings by the immediacy of the issue there, but then also we try to make sure that we set attainable goals. So some of the buildings that we have had taken down in the last few years are 405 Main Street. These are all buildings out of red X. 405 Main, I believe 235, 237 Main Street. That was the Tropical building. Those came down with CDBG funds. 56 North Bridge just came down. Few years back, I think almost 3 years now, 179 Pine, I believe. It was the corner of Pine and Hampshire Street, and that's where they moved part of the Peddler building now. That was another X'd out building that was taken down through the Problem Property Group. 28 Cabot, I just witnessed the extermination this morning, so that should be down in the next couple of weeks. 253 Walnut didn't come down, but it was an X'd building. It was a two-family house that was renovated through receivership, so that's no longer a red X. And then, we have some in process. 111 High Street is in process right now. That's a red X down the street. We're working on getting that remedied very shortly.
111?
111, yep. 107 Clemente is next on the demolition list, so that should be down in the next few months. We're gonna use the revolving fund to get that down. That's another red X building. And then 289 Main Street, we have in Housing Court, and that's another red X building. So we are targeting those specifically and putting together a plan to get them down. And it just sometimes, going through the legal process, the courts try to give owners as much time as they can to try to salvage some of their interest in the building before they're demolished. But eventually, some of these buildings we have to demolish them before we even take them, and then we actually take the property after they come down.
Such as South Summer Street, potentially.
Yeah.
How is are we getting a lot of funds from the vacant building charge?
So right now it's kind of a lull period. The renewal period is November 15th is like the final date for submissions, and then some trickle in, especially from financial institutions. They operate so slowly, and they're very difficult to contact directly, so those kind of trickle in, and then we have some appeals and those come in, but that is usually from, I would say September, like the end of September, October, until probably about March is when our peak time. So we were at about 174,000.
And does that money go into a revolving fund, or is it going into the general fund?
Revolving fund.
Revolving fund, so those monies are used to board up or
Demolish,
whatever.
or pay for fees for instance, 525 Pleasant Street came down, and I don't believe that was an X building, but it was a two-family home. It was full of asbestos, so it wasn't just the demolition fee, but also the removal of hazardous materials and paying for the dumpsters to haul it out. There are a lot of associated costs.
Okay, thanks.
That makes sense.
Counselor Sullivan?
Yeah, I'd like to just expand on this a little bit for everybody. Number one, that was the good point, the one on Pleasant Street also. There's a lot that they do not have red X's on them, right, that fit right into this category. If you took all the ones that we still have right now in the city that have red X's, add to that the ones that should, there's probably upward of 50 structures that should come down tomorrow, all right? Now, the revolving fund's it's helping a lot, and we have a tremendous city demolition crew now that's been able to expedite this process and get a lot done for us. But what has happened is, as the money's flowed in to this revolving fund, it has been cut from CDBG, all right? The Citizens Advisory Committee voted for $100,000 extra for it this year. Development and Government Relations, $100,000 extra. Full City Council, $100,000 extra. The mayor cut it from the budget. The Building Department this year requested $100,000 additional. That was cut to $50,000 also. So any grounds we've made with the revolving fund has been lost by other cuts. And as far as the demolition team goes, they would be able to, they are limited. They could probably do a lot more, but without the funds available just for the waste removal, for hauling it off and the additional equipment, if they took them all down today, we'd have a monstrous pile of rubble the size of Bondi's Island, all right, with no place to put it, because it still costs money to haul this stuff away. So that's what the problem is, and it's not a several $100,000 problem, it's a several $1 million problem.
So if I can just, and then I'll make a motion if that's okay, but if I could ask the Blighted Building Committee for our August meeting of the City Council to present us with a list, both Red X buildings and other buildings that you are looking at in terms of their status, in terms of what the potential for renovation is, and or if it's going to be scheduled for demolition, when that would be. And then if it is possible for those that you would say that demolition is the proper alternative, if we could get an idea as to approximately, and I know you can't give me a full figure, but I'm expecting it to be several $1 million, of what it would cost us to do that. Because again, if we know we need to demolish something, and we're going to spend $200,000 or $300,000 a year, or $150,000 or $200,000 a year, and we can do it and get them all gone in a much quicker process, and then maybe having somebody renovate those vacant lots and building homes or businesses moving in, the city is far better off than leaving a building that is unsafe, that firefighters can't go in to fight, that causes blight in the neighborhood. So I would like to make that motion that we were requesting a report to the full City Council for our August 6th meeting regarding blighted buildings and buildings with red X's, whether or not a list of those that can be renovated, those that should be demolished, and if possible, an estimate of what the demolition cost would be, and I'll make that motion.
Second that motion. Quick question, the slash, could you just let the public know what, the X's, you're not going in unless you know someone's in there, the slash? The one mark?
The slash is I believe it's.
The slash, the structure itself has some deficiencies, so it just tells us to be more careful when we go into.
Okay.
They're usually abandoned or.
But you will go in, you will go in those,
Right,
yeah, just cautiously.
right.
I imagine you have to go into any building cautiously.
That's burning, right?
I hope. Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much. So on the motion?
So the motion is to provide,
To ask
basically the status update listing, et cetera, by the August 5th or 6th full city council meeting.
August 6th City Council meeting, including the cost, what those that we think can be renovated and those that should be demolished. And if possible, an estimate of demolition cost.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I believe building's set, fire set, health is set. Mike, you got a long night ahead. Hang in there. Law department.
Thank you.
What do you want at this one? You want a table for the August meeting?
No, I think when we do this in August, that should. Well, the motion is that we get that report, so I think if we don't have it then, we know that that hasn't been complied with.
So then I'll just table it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mike, thanks for coming down. Usually, I was gonna say, where's my little report?
Would you mind taking up the South Water Street next? South Water Street, number 7, no, number 11. I make a motion, we take up item number 11.
Sure. So moved. Item number 11 is ordered that the Public Safety Committee meet with the city engineer, the superintendent, and representatives of Hayes and Paper, Sunoco Products to resolve the issue of unsafe roads on Water Street, both to and from these respective businesses. If you want something to say, you can please feel
Have 'em
free
come
to
in.
sit at the table.
Yeah. So again, I filed this order. I was asked to take a drive over South Water Street, which I did, and delicately move my vehicle through what was a maze of potholes and disaster. And I've got a communication from the city engineer today, which, offers some insight into the whole problem, but still leaves resolution to it in doubt. But there's part of the street that's owned by the state, there's part of the street that's owned by the city, and there's part of the street that's owned, I'm assuming, by Hazen and by Sunoco at the end. But getting to the property that Hazen and Sunoco own, and I'm gonna say especially the very first part with the state, is extremely difficult. So I'm gonna suggest that we have Mr. McManus talk about the issue and how we can try to rectify it. And I know we're working on trying to get a resolution, and this is Charlie Sheehan from Hayes and Paper who has brought the issue to my attention.
Thanks for coming in, Charlie.
Mike, you want to just go over?
Yeah, so in the handout, the last page, there's a map, and this was provided in the email from Bob earlier, that shows the limits of ownership for this road. And as you indicated, the state owns where it starts on Main Street to just under the off-ramp of 391. And then the city owns about a 250-foot section, and then it's privately owned after that. We've had conversations with the state about this road. They don't really consider it a road, even though they own it. They consider it a driveway, if you will. We've had conversations about the state releasing ownership of this road. So
City?
To the city. As it is, we can't use the Chapter 90 money to repair the road because even though we own it, I don't believe it's ever been accepted by the city, and the city can only use Chapter 90 money on accepted streets. We do pothole filling, and we've done it on the state's portion and our portion. I'm not sure if we've gone too far into the private section in the past.
We've done that ourselves.
Yeah.
Charlie, just make sure the microphone's on, the green light. There you go.
Yeah.
You got it.
The road is beyond pothole repair. That's the issue. Sunoco and Hazen have rebuilt the roadway in front of a lot of the of our owned area at our own expense. Over every year we're adding money in putting it into that road. We did a big section that is the city-owned area a few years ago, and that's already getting torn up. But the real problem is from 391 back, which is, like you said, the state-owned. All we're asking is that the city uses that road as well, particularly in the wintertime, to access the salt bins, and salt is killing that road as well because it's all over the place. But so we're asking the city to help us repair that road. And Holyoke Water uses that road to access their turbines behind our plant. They're there every day. Their group, there's probably 8 trucks out there over the last couple of weeks. So it's not just Hazen and Sunoco. Our employees are trying to get to work. They're Holyoke residents.
And the city also has
taxpayers. We're taxpayers, and we're just looking for some help.
We have a wastewater pumping station back there that we need access to as well. But without the ability to use Chapter 90 money, we really don't have the funds to do the reconstruction that's needed with the milling and repaving. Once.
Chapter 90 monies, why?
Pardon me?
You can't use Chapter 90 monies, why?
Well, we don't own the road, and then the portion of the road that we do own isn't accepted. So it has to be both owned by the city and accepted by the city.
That blue section right there, you're saying is not an accepted road?
I believe so.
Right, so so technically, we could change that.
You could change that.
That's not as important as the first part.
The orange, the red.
We've actually done a lot of maintenance on that road. The city did fill one pothole this year, but we, because it was so bad after Terry came down, graciously came down to see it, we paid someone to come and fill all the potholes because it was just so bad. I mean, some of these potholes were 9 inches deep. I mean, and there's no getting around them.
And even when I was there, I mean, I saw a few trucks trying to maneuver in there.
Plus the part right
they were having
underneath
issues.
the transition between the state and the city property fills when it rains, fills with about a foot of water. So then you can't see the potholes. We've had employees lose tires. I mean, they're coming to my office looking to get reimbursed for their tires, and I feel so bad.
What's the state response to you? I mean, you said you had asked them to give it to us, or they think it's a driveway. I mean, is this something that we get the state representation involved with, or are they
No, I think they're open to it.
open
It's just to
fixing it or giving it to us?
giving it to us.
And if they gave that to us, we would have to take that all over as our street, and then we could use Chapter 90 money to
Fix it,
fix it.
correct.
Is it, I mean,
It's a process that we're working on.
right, timeline? I'm not gonna hold you to it, but I'm saying, is this the state, dealing with the state, I understand that, but
Yeah.
are we talking like it's gonna take us 3 years to do?
No, I don't think 3 years. It's several months. And, you gotta look at easements and property and who owns what and everything.
So obviously, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
So,
Well, there's the salt shed is also owned by the city, and the property is leased by the city to the state, and that lease is up. So the state, this is only in our discussion, trying to get the state to help fix the road. They're coming back and saying that that the city's lease needs to be renewed. I mean, part of that could be that the city maintained that road. I don't know. They're bringing the state down. They were pretty upset seeing the amount of storage underneath 391 by the city.
Storage of just the salt, or?
Oh, no, there's a lot of,
Yeah.
there's a lot of materials down there, which is, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. You know, there's a wood storage area, trees that are cut down out of there, and they were pretty upset about that, being a fire hazard, I believe.
So, is it possible, and I'm just looking at this from, if I'm the state and I've got a city saying, look, we'll take this over, just deed it over to us, and then if they did that, and then we accepted this as a public, accepted public way, then we would be able to use Chapter 90 funds, correct?
Yes.
So, I guess my question, I mean, I can understand a little bit of concern from the city's perspective, because obviously it's going to cost us, we'd be maintaining the whole thing, and that would cost us a little more money. However, we also have an obligation to try to make sure that our businesses have a chance to thrive. So if, I can't, and I read the city engineer's letter, and I can't figure out why the state would not just say, look, you want it, here it is, and not kind of go through what seems to be, oh, you can do this or do that.
I believe that's their train of thought as well.
Okay. So, I mean, I assume we probably have to go through legal to do that, or?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would encourage, and again, having driven down the road and go by there, since I've driven there, I go by there and look all the time, and I've stopped on a few occasions just to look. I mean, if we can try to move that process so that we can potentially, do what really needs to be as a repaving, at some point in the relatively near future to resolve this problem, certainly so that it's not, next summer, they're not having the same problem. I mean, I would like to make it next week that you're not having the same problem, but.
The other concern was the number of employees that ride their bikes and walk to work, from the local neighborhoods. There's a lot of employees that live right around this area.
Yep.
And they walk to work. I have some people that walk to work all the way from the area by the Y, every day.
And there's no walkway there, correct?
There's no way. And there's 18-wheelers, and not just, Hazen's, it's, there's trucks,
right.
City trucks and Sunoco trucks going by.
But if I can just start with the one, let me say, and I'll go back to that problem. But
Yeah.
if we were in a position
Yeah.
for the city to take over the part that the state now owns, and the city was able to then refurbish that road.
Right.
And potentially, when we're doing that, maybe make a bike lane or something along that
I'm just
line.
saying, make it a little bit wider if we can. And it's just a hazard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming with two trucks, the two trucks probably can't really fit on that road together. Yeah, I didn't think so. So again, if we can try to work on that, I know, and I don't know if you think that's the right way to go, but I kept reading and I'm thinking like that's the only way that seems like can work, because the state seems like they're going to tell us, well, we don't have to do anything and it's not our problem. I hate to say they're talking like that, but that's what I'm hearing.
Councilor Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question, because I know that Chapter 90 monies don't go very far every year. So, we're always picking off the list what we can do and what we don't have enough to do. So I'm just a little bit wondering if that's going to really be the magic bullet. I mean, I imagine from the sounds of it that it would certainly meet the top of the list for being one of the worst streets. But I'm going to guess you probably have a bunch in the queue for the Chapter 90 money already, right?
Yeah, well, we do. But outside of Chapter 90, I don't see any way that the city could undertake
Right,
fixing this.
so I'm just
And I don't
wondering.
think that the state's gonna do it either.
So, I may be way off base, but why wouldn't we be pressing the state more? Because it is their road. They have a lot more of our money than we do. So why shouldn't they pony up and make it passable if some of the things down there are related to the state? I mean, can they just ignore it? I mean, aren't they liable legally just the way we are?
Yeah, but I can't really speak for the state on why they choose to do what they do with their money. They might see other projects as more pressing and needing of their money than this.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
They just put sidewalks in under a interstate ramp. So, I mean, to me, this is as high a priority as that was.
Well, the sidewalks were part of a larger
The
project.
intersection, the
Yeah,
light
and
improvement.
the light improvements, changing the roadway.
So it was sort of coincidental.
It is, but they also have requirements that when they spend their money doing projects, they have to look at complete streets. So they have to look at sidewalks, they have to look at bike lanes.
So do you think that's part of the concern of the state with this particular road? Because it wouldn't just be fix the road?
You know, I don't want to speak for the state.
Well, I
but,
know. I'm
I don't-
asking you to speculate.
I don't
which-
think this is anywhere on their radar.
Period.
And even though we've brought it up to their attention, it's been brought to their attention.
It's just not gonna get on the
not on
radar.
their radar.
So if
They said that
anything's gonna
they own
happen,
it, but they're not required to maintain it. That's what they've told us.
all right.
Yeah, just,
But they are willing
And
to
if-
make it so we can at least access the money.
Well, they
Chapter
would have
90.
to, they would have to give us the road. We would have
But
to
they-
take it and
But
accept
it
it,
looks
and
like
then we
they're
could,
open to that.
yes.
All right.
I don't think that they have any benefit of owning this road.
Okay.
yeah, just in the city
So it's sort of a
engineer,
leftover from their point of view?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
the city engineer's comments were, the state says they have no responsibility for maintaining or upgrading this section of the existing roadway. They explained that this roadway is essentially a private driveway.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And they aren't planning on doing anything, and they do talk about
I know you
the
guys
city
always do.
ending up potentially taking it. So I mean, I don't see us, and it's not a perfect answer, but at
Right.
least it's a potential of improvement.
Yeah.
And at this point, that's, my goal is, let's find a way to get it improved, and yet, and the other thing, I don't know if this, because it is in an area with community development potential funds too. I don't know if that's a possibility for roadway, because that's, I know it's still in that South Holyoke
Yeah,
district. which is part
so
of
my
it.
understanding with community development is they don't generally fund what they would consider maintenance, and they might consider this maintenance of the road, even though
Yeah.
they pay for new sidewalks.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's potentially then, even if we do it and we ended up using Chapter 90 on the road, maybe we could get community development to help build a sidewalk for making it safer for the workers to get there on bikes or on walking. I mean, that's another alternative. But again, I just think, having seen it, having been there, and, you know, I appreciate the communications from the engineer and from Mike that, you know, our answer is to tell the state, yeah, we'll take it. And, you know, then go from there and try to come up with money to make improvements and.
and then widening the road, we would have to take a look at easements, right-of-ways, and also when you get into road widening, sometimes that could trigger permitting requirements, whether or not there's wetlands or we're close enough to the canal that it might have to go before Conservation Commission for widening.
Can you talk real brief, just the lease for the salt shed?
I don't think there's a dollar value on the lease. I think it's an agreement. Pretty much the state owns 391, and the city has use of the space underneath 391. And that's where we put our salt shed.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, if everybody's agreed at this point where we're going, that we table this and ask the superintendent to work with and the engineer to work with the law department to have the Mass DOT transfer the property to the city, and then once we get that, come back and let's see if we can figure out a way to put the roadway back
Right,
together.
I'm gonna email Vega and Don Humison too, and just see if they can make this move a little
We've met
faster.
with them as well.
What's that now?
We've met with Don and Aaron,
Okay. Well,
see if they could help.
Yeah,
And-
squeaky wheel gets
yeah.
old, now that we're all aware of it, maybe we can all just start poking the bear a
Yeah,
little
they
bit.
came down and visited us as well.
So again, Mike, if you can just move that process as much as you can, and I'll make a motion, we table this, and hopefully in a couple of months, we'll come back and hopefully have the state
Come back
say,
in
oh, here it
September.
is, and we go from there.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All in favor?
What's that?
Then you have one more.
Oh, my.
I'm gonna take your two orders together up, okay? Could you make a motion that we take item 4 and 7 up? Please.
All right, make a motion, we take item 4 and 7.
So moved. Item 4 and 7 are both from Juan Anderson Burgos. A study be done at the intersection of West Franklin Street and Linden Street to see what can be done to improve safety. It's a dangerous intersection where multiple accidents have occurred on many occasions. And item 7, request a pedestrian safety study be done at intersection of Northampton Street and Dwight Street. Pedestrians have expressed concerns that vehicles making a right on red from Northampton Street onto Dwight are failing to be cautious of pedestrians crossing Northampton Street, resulting in near hits. We all saw your notes, actually. So one of them looks like we're going to table, if I am reading that correctly. That would be item
Item 4.
4, but did you want to say?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I thought there was already work being done on the corner of Dwight Street and Northampton Street. I thought they were doing a crosswalk. I saw some construction being done.
For item 7? Item 7, we replaced the traffic signals there. That was part of the traffic signal project that the city's doing. And we've put in new pedestrian equipment. So the pedestrian crossing push buttons work, the lights work. So you can use that now. Before, when you filed the order, it didn't work. You would
Right.
press the button and nothing would happen.
So I think this would mean the order would be complied with, no? If it's working now, because that's what the issue
Yeah.
was.
It is working.
Yeah, so then we can,
And I asked Joe Connor before the meeting, and he said, yes, it's working, so.
perfect.
So
All right,
prior
yeah.
to that, it was just, the pedestrian was going without any
Right.
light.
Yeah, she almost got hit.
Yeah, I
So
can see
that's,
that.
that was what my main concern was. And then as far as since I moved into the house in 2012, I can't even count on both hands how many times there's been accidents at that intersection. I'm not sure if it's because the trees come they're very low. So if you ever drive down West Franklin Street, on your way to Beach, it's very green. And you really don't see the stop signs or anything. It sort of blends in, everything blends in. So I'm trying to figure out what can we do to prevent maybe flashing lights at that intersection where Linden and West Franklin meet.
Well, I think Linden has the stop, right? West Franklin is a through street.
Yup, so West Franklin cuts right through and Linden has a stop, but sometimes they cut right through. I've seen so many accidents there, it's not even funny.
The right-of-way is for West Franklin. We could put a larger stop sign.
Either a larger stop sign, maybe, I was thinking maybe like flashing lights so that they stick out.
Okay.
Or at least look at the area, so,
Yeah.
have someone,
You are right, though. I know people on Linden Street, because my sister lives on West Franklin, and when I'm going down there, I've come close a few times with the people on Linden
it's
just going through.
crazy. It's crazy.
And I don't know if they don't see you, or they're looking only one way.
It's just, it's so congested. Like, when I drive down it, I drive so slow because it's congested. It just, you can't see, like, traffic. For some reason, it blends everything in.
But maybe we need bigger stop signs there, too. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
yeah.
honestly think it's almost like they think it's a right of way.
Yeah.
And they
I
don't.
think so.
And I don't know if it's it's a small stop sign, or is it possible to get two big stop signs there?
Yeah, we could, it's a stop street, so we could.
Because it's a
put-
one-way street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, halfway. Linden Street,
But that part,
yeah,
That
that
part
one
is
part I'm
one
talking
way.
about, that's a one-way.
Right.
They fly right through onto West Franklin,
Right.
crossing over to the two-way of
Right.
Linden
Right.
Street.
I mean, that might be, at least there's, no matter what side you're looking at, you got stop sign on both sides. I mean, it's not like, you shouldn't, I think sometimes they're looking one way and they just don't see the stop sign.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is a dangerous intersection, you are correct.
So we're gonna table 4 then, because the notes say the engineering department's still working on it?
Okay.
That would be you, Mike?
Okay, make a motion,
yeah, I think in the meantime, we can try one of the flashing stop signs where the edges flash.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay.
We can buy one and put one in.
Okay.
See if,
So I'll make a
see if
motion
that
we-
does anything.
we table 4 with the idea that we're gonna try the flashing stop sign, and then.
That would work,
And
yeah.
then we'll have it here, if it doesn't work, we can still take it back up.
Yeah.
So,
That would
I'll
be
make
fine.
that motion,
All in favor?
all right?
See if you can distract the drivers from their texting.
Right. Oh.
And then item 7, Mike, says the traffic lights have been replaced at this intersection, the pedestrians' push buttons now work. Want to verify that on your ride home and maybe text me?
I'll make a motion, the order's been complied with, and then the intersection is now safer for pedestrians.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You're here for 8? Are you? Okay. Let's take that one up.
I'll let them come in.
Yeah, thank you. Make a motion.
Would you like to come on in and sit down? You're welcome to.
Item 8 is that the DPW work with the city council to develop a process for residents to request tree pits on city sidewalks near their home. There may be a fee associated with this process.
Can make a motion
What's
to
up,
take it
Mike?
off the table?
All in favor?
Aye.
So this is something that I was chatting with Rebecca a little while ago about. Certainly, there could be a process where we have an application for a homeowner that wants to have a tree pit in front of their home. And, we'd want to look at things like underground utility conflicts, what would the at-grade treatment be? You want to give the trees enough space to grow, but you don't want the roots to pop up sidewalks. And you also want to have a tree that's not going to block a stop sign or other kind of signage, so there's line of sight issues. The city, where there's a tree belt in front of people's houses, there's the ongoing program where we'll bring a tree from the nursery and plant it in the tree belt. There shouldn't be a reason why we can't do the same thing for people who don't have a tree belt but have a wide enough sidewalk that would accommodate a tree and also allow pedestrian and handicap access through the corridor. We don't have a process finalized. It's something we're working on. We should be able to have it done soon.
So would this be, and I'm gonna sound stupid here, so don't hold it against me. So would this be, there's my sidewalk, and I want to plant a tree, and that we would cut out a portion of the sidewalk to plant the tree?
We would cut out a portion of the sidewalk,
As long as we're not taking up other things.
yeah, dig the hole, plant the tree, and then bring something back and fix the surface.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to come to the mic?
Yeah, that'd be nice. No.
Is that on?
There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
It's the specific addresses that we're talking about have kind of a double wide sidewalk where at some point Some parts of the sidewalk were paved over with a combination of asphalt and cement. So there are existing trees along this row of row houses. There's 3 trees and there's 5 row houses. So there's 2 row houses that are kind of missing a tree. That's essentially what we're asking for. It's just a tree.
Mike, is there any, a lot of times you get the calls from people that are saying that the tree roots have now grabbed onto the water line that's coming from the street to the house. It's crushed it, or the sewer lines, and then the city doesn't own it because the owner owns from the house to the street. Is there any way to, if we were to put the trees in it, I know it's more of an act of God, but is there anything that we could prevent it, so if they get a tree in front of their house 10 years down the road, their sewage isn't coming back into the house because there's been a blockage due to tree roots?
I mean,
Or is there certain trees that don't have big roots, I guess?
they all tend to do it. Some trees, as you said, do it more so than others. But not planting it in the vicinity of your sewer lateral or your water line would be the way to prevent that.
Perfect. So we can do it and still maybe prevent that problem.
Right.
Counselor Vacan?
Thanks. My question was going to be, did we have any areas with sidewalks that are wide enough to do that and still have access to meet for people that have disabilities?
Yeah, we do.
But we have a few areas where that's,
in the downtown area.
yeah, okay.
Specifically, like what street?
Right.
Suffolk
I mean, we
Street?
can't just do something for like you said, 1 house or 2 houses, but as long as there's areas that it could apply to, right?
Sure.
Right.
I mean, a liquor store across the street, if they want trees in front of their business.
Yeah.
They have to say,
There's areas that it could apply to. And it just got paved.
Definitely, I mean, we could have an entire tree belt. I can tell you that. Might fix some of the stormwater drainage issues that we also have, so.
Yeah.
And the sewer line runs underneath all of our row houses, so there's not sounds crazy.
That is.
So, but I think it's a really great. There are areas of the city. At some point, it's just easier to tar over everything, instead of having.
So would there,
So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
would there be, obviously, we're talking, we don't know exactly every single case, but would there be a fee that you think would be appropriate pretty consistently?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, for people who have a tree belt, when we dig the hole for them, there's no fee for that.
Mhm.
So I'm not. I
But
don't
in
really
this
know if there
case,
would
if
be a
we
fee.
were digging up the pit, we are doing some additional things, I'm assuming they still wouldn't pay for the tree.
Right.
They would just,
To cut.
they would just pay for the
Yeah.
the sidewalk cut or the pit, and they seem to be in favor of, as long as it's not $50,000. Boy, I don't know, she didn't even budge when I said 50,000. So,
So, go ahead.
do you think $50 or $100? Any idea?
I have
mean,
no
I mean,
The
how long
cost, so
do you
the
think it would
cost,
take?
the costs associated with it are the labor. It would probably take a couple guys half a day to do the work. I gotta
Be a bit.
cut it, remove the asphalt or concrete, dig the hole, plant the tree, backfill it, and then put in the grate on top.
Okay.
Or there's other types of flexible, permeable pavement treatments that can go over the trees. And it would be the material cost associated with that.
A big pot with a small tree? I'm being sincere. I mean, if you've seen them, they got these big pots and they've got like a little Japanese maple or something like that. I mean, is that, that might be cheaper than digging concrete and maybe looking at water lines and utilities and?
So we tried that on Dwight Street, and the trees died.
Okay.
It's hard to keep them watered in the summertime,
pot.
and in the winter, the roots freeze.
So should we table it and revisit this in September, October to see if there's been any progress?
Sure.
Okay,
I'm assuming
You
your
okay
goal
with
would
that?
probably be next spring?
sure.
When you mentioned like the grates, the three trees that are there don't have grates around. A streamlined, like planar version of what a tree pit would be, we wouldn't necessarily. You know, I think that the grates that are just like way downtown look awesome, but if there's just like a more residential, I personally like that.
Make a motion, we table and try to get some kind of additional information in September, maybe?
Sure. All in favor?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your
Thank you for
interest.
coming down. Okay, so let's back in order. Item 3. The DPW Superintendent provides City Council an update on efforts to improve public parking. Please provide updates on the contract with the third-party vendor. Please provide update on year-over-year revenue collection, and please update the council with any updates, if any, relative to new practices for the administration and collection of revenue.
So an update on the contract with the third-party vendor. We currently don't have a third-party vendor for management. What this might be referring to is the mobile app payment for parking. The city's entered into an agreement with Park Mobile. They provide mobile payment for on-street parking meters and lots. So it'll be in the is it the top of your garage, the upper deck. You'll be able to use Park Mobile to pay for your parking as well as on the street. You'll still be able to put coins in the meters, but the system, it kind of modernizes our existing parking infrastructure without having to buy brand new parking meters that accept a credit card. It's going to get rolled out in early July, where it becomes live. And there'll be some public announcements about how it works. And all of the parking meters will have a sticker. There's nothing that changes with the rates. The rates are still the same. I think it's 25 cents for 20 minutes or 75 cents an hour for the on-street parking. If you wanted to use the mobile app, you can. There's I think it's a 15-cent fee to the user. The user pays that fee. And the Park Mobile, they collect all the fees, and at the end of the month, they send over to the city the revenue that would have been collected.
Is that all on credit card?
You can use a credit card with Park Mobile. So if you don't have the app on your phone, there's a phone number where you can call, and they'll swipe the card and pay for the parking. The thing with the app is that let's say you're going over to Holyoke Hummus and you put an hour on the meter, it'll tell you your hour's up, and then allows you to add more time from your phone. And then with the parking enforcement, he'll be able to see the parking meters will still be flashing red, because you have to put a coin in order to get it to change from red. But he'll have an app where he can look and see the cars that are paid through Park Mobile. And if they're not paid by Park Mobile and the light's flashing, then he'll write a ticket.
Dr. Reagan?
Thanks. So I'm happy to hear that you're going to send out some communication, I don't know, out with a bill or something that people will all be getting, or something relative to this going into effect.
Well, I think it'll be through Facebook, press releases.
Oh, okay, so general
Yeah.
stuff, and on our website for the city?
City's
like that?
website, yeah.
Okay. Because I did get a call from one constituent about some confusion on the parking deck about the ticket machine and how that's all working? Because I guess the person, and I think it was just a matter of not figuring out how it worked, because they kept trying to get a ticket, but it doesn't work that way, I guess. I haven't personally even seen it. So there's some confusion about what's going on now, I think, but this will probably clarify everything.
That'll clarify the on-street parking meters.
Oh, okay, this was at one of the garages.
So at the Prue garage, we've installed new equipment for the entrance and exit.
Okay, so, and I'm not gonna say this exactly correctly, but the person was trying to press a button to get a ticket to do the parking, couldn't get one, and apparently didn't understand what they had to do. So I don't know if it's hard to see or if the person just.
So there's no tickets to get
Right.
at Prue.
Right. So there was something they didn't understand about what to do when they were trying to pay. And then I guess they ended up getting a ticket because they didn't pay, because they didn't, they didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know, is it hard to see what you should do, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Over at the top of your garage, there is a machine where you say how many hours you want to be there. It tells you how much money to put in. You put the money in, and then it prints a ticket.
Okay.
The ticket comes down at the bottom
So
of the
that must be
machine.
what the person was used to, and then they went to the other one.
Okay, where it's
And-
different equipment.
And we're like,
yeah.
I couldn't get a ticket. So how does the other one work?
Which one?
The one where
Prue?
you don't get a ticket?
So you come in, there's a license plate reader. It reads the license plate, and it opens the gate.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're a monthly parker, you go in one bin. If you're an hourly parker, you go in another bin.
Yeah,
And then when you go to exit, there's another license plate reader.
yeah,
If you're a monthly parker, the gate opens up.
yeah.
If you're an hourly parker, there's a little box with a credit card swipe.
Oh, okay.
And it'll say, you owe $2, you owe $5.
Oh, all right.
And this one is credit card only,
I
for
wonder
now.
if the person, well, I'm just
But-
wondering how they got out.
But it's not live. The system's not live.
Okay.
We're testing it out. We're trying to get the bugs worked out.
Oh.
And on the screen, right now, it says parking is free.
All right.
Is it free?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Right
'cause the
now, while
person-
we're working the bugs out.
Oh, okay, because the person that called me said they got a ticket in the mail. So I'm like, well, I
Ticket
said,
in the mail?
yeah, so I said, well, I think you should just go appeal it, whatever it is you have. Because I,
But we don't mail tickets.
so I was like, I don't know. I didn't totally get what the person was talking about.
I can tell you, I was in New Bedford somewhere in the fall, I think, or maybe it was spring. And I went there and I parked in a municipal garage. They did have a ticket. When you went in, you got a ticket.
Yeah.
And then I drove back out. I'm assuming, all right, it says to scan your barcode. I'm scanning my barcode and nothing's happening. But then there is a place, number to call. So I called the number and they just opened the gate for me. In reality, as you go back into the garage, there is a place to process your credit card. So I got like $14 of free parking on New Bedford. Don't tell them that. But then my next day, I realized what I did wrong, and I had to pay the credit card thing. But it was like there were 3 exits, and every exit had a credit card payment, which you did on the ticket, and it charged your credit card, and then you would as you drove your car. Now that it would open the gate for you automatically.
Yeah. So
And
there,
that
it may
looked
be
pretty
that I
well.
misunderstood a little bit of
When did you get this?
this call. I got like a week ago, week and a half ago. I might have misunderstood a little
Yeah.
bit in the telling of the story,
And
but
we
it had
don't-
to do with, he was trying to get a ticket, couldn't get a ticket, then I guess didn't really see how he should pay, but then he said something about getting a ticket, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I would go down and appeal it, whatever it is.
So we don't mail tickets out. If he had a parking ticket, if he was at the
It was one of the garages.
If he was at the top of your deck and he didn't have the parking ticket, the parking enforcement officer would have ticketed his vehicle,
That must be what happened.
but he would have had the parking violation notice
Yes.
on his,
So that must be
on
what
his car.
happened.
And
That
then,
must be what happened.
and then if he doesn't pay that, after 15 days or 30 days, the city notifies the person that you have an unpaid parking
Okay, so
ticket.
that must be what happened, and his issue was he couldn't get a ticket, or he didn't know how to get a ticket. So I just said to him, well, go and bring your story down and talk to the appeals people.
Sure.
I didn't know what else to tell him.
But the parking
it's-
machine is,
It's,
I
usually
think it's
pretty
simple,
okay, right?
yeah.
Okay.
It tells you exactly what to do.
yeah,
to-
yeah. All right, well, thank you.
So that was the on-street parking with the Prue Garage. We have the new equipment where we'll be able, and it's cashless, so it won't get broken into. That was the big problem that we had with the other system, where it would get broken into, and it was very expensive to repair. Over at the top of your garage, we have monthly parkers who are allowed with a window hanger that they get from DPW, and then there is a machine that dispenses a ticket you put in your windshield for a pay and display way to park. That one only takes cash.
So cash or Topier and
Cash
only
well,
credit at
yeah. So cash or Park Mobile,
Okay,
or monthly at Topier, monthly or credit card only at Prue,
okay.
and then coins or Park Mobile
On the
on
street.
street.
Park mobile or coins on the street.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that's neat, though.
We're hopeful.
Well,
Yeah.
you're trying something different. That's a plus.
Since we've taken over, we've repaired a number of on-street parking meters. With the park enforcement officer doubles duty as the coin collector once a week. He and another DPW employee go around and collect the coins from the meters. And at that time, he checks the meters to make sure that they're functioning properly, that the batteries are good, that he clears any blockages. There are times where the meter would get jammed with coins, and you wouldn't be able to put any more coins in. And at the same time, if you can't put a coin in, then you can't write a ticket for the person. So we have become more efficient with on-street parking meters, and we do have replacement meters that fit within our housings that we're swapping out.
That's good.
I don't have a revenue update at this time. I was trying to prepare one, but I had there was some discrepancies in different data sets. We're close to the end of the month, so if you can wait, I can send a.
Yeah, we'll comply the order, just send it to us before the meeting in August,
Okay.
just so I can read, just so I can say
Yeah.
it's complied within every aspect of the order's been answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion, we table, that the order's been complied with, and they will be getting a revenue report at our August meeting.
Are you good with that, Mike?
Yeah, at the end of July, I'll send the revenue report to the full council.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And we take item 5, yep.
Item 5 is a order by Councilor Leasley that the city engineer investigate the traffic patterns around Northampton Street and South Street in order to determine if any changes need to be made. Residents have been complaining about the traffic building up in the left turn lane onto South Street from Northampton Street southbound in particular.
So I'm going to say we're still working on this order. I don't have anything to report.
All right, well, let's just table it, so, because, right, I mean,
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
don't have to get into detail, let's just table it.
Yeah.
But this has
Well,
been
go
a
ahead.
problem for a long time.
Okay.
And if I can just, I drive
Sure.
down there all the time. It's just traffic.
It
You
is,
got the two
yeah.
lights close together. What are you gonna do?
3,
Three, right.
yeah.
So we're looking probably for like a September meeting,
Okay,
once we get back into the swing of things, so, we got 3 months for anything that's been tabled, it's,
all right.
all right, cool.
Cool.
So the answer is.
Motion.
Okay, make a motion, we table item 5.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Make a motion, we take up item 6.
Item 6 is a order from Councilor Murphy. Order that the mayor provide the funding needed for the upgrade of electrical systems at Wisteria-Hearst. The current system prevents the museum from doing some business, but also poses a threat to personal safety and increases the threat of loss by fire. Mike, is that anything you can speak to?
I know it's, there's a big number out there. It does affect Wisteria Hearst's ability to hold events in the summertime because it limits their ability to have HVAC, air conditioning.
Yeah.
But as for the nitty-gritty of finding the money, I can't speak to that. There
Yeah.
was an application into CDBG. But it was a big number. I think it was
240,000.
It was either 200 or
200
300,000.
240,000.
Big.
Yeah, I mean, my concern with this, because I did meet with Kate, I think, and, you know, when I met with her, she said, you know, we have this problem, and it's caused, and then I met with Bob, and, you know, he gave me a communication that told me, you know, there was, while potentially, the risk might be low, there was a consistent risk in terms of someone getting electrocuted and some other thing he talked about.
arc flash.
Arc flash. That was his major concern, that an arc flash would really, basically, I guess, kill somebody.
It could, yeah.
And I know when she's been to the budget meeting and when I met with her, she talked about, you know, having to not have people go here, not have people go there. But Bob indicated that unfortunately, even though the goal is not to have people go there, in an emergency, they have no choice but to go there, and that was his concern. So, and I know we've got 15,000 for maintenance in the budget, which is, I'm assuming, to start thinking about how to rectify the problem, but, I mean, at some point,
No.
we're gonna have to spend the money to fix it.
That 15,000 for maintenance is their annual budget for maintenance. That's to have people come in and work on the existing HVAC system for the carriage house. It's to fix broken
Okay, so
windows
that's
that
not-
happen.
That's not to do with any of this?
No, it has nothing, no.
Oh.
You would think there would be some sort of grant out for a museum of this type.
Kate's looking.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, and she's mentioned that to me as well several times, that she was trying to find a way to,
What about
Come up with
MIFA?
some.
Or what about would the
Mass Historic.
the CPA monies? We couldn't use it for that, huh?
CPA money could be used for it.
Put in an application.
Well, do you want to tell her about that, Council Murphy?
I could try. I know she, you know, she did indicate she's, they're looking to start work sometime in 2020. And again, my concern is I don't want someone, we're waiting and we don't have the answer, and then something does happen, and obviously, number one, someone gets injured or killed, and number two, then the city gets sued.
Well,
for
then they
that.
would have to close it if the risk
Yeah.
is that high.
Yeah.
They would have to close the building. I mean, seriously. If it's that high a risk.
So the risk with arc flash is when you open up the panel.
Yeah.
And if you keep the panel closed,
Don't they have a lockout tagout on it?
Yeah.
they have, yeah.
They don't use it though, or?
Well, it's an old panel. The panel has fuses that you screw in.
Right. So,
But you could.
I'd like to leave it on the table, yeah. Yeah, table it, and,
we should ask the master chief electrician person to come in at the next meeting perhaps, right? If there is one?
Yeah.
Don't start.
But, you know, I just, again, I, from the engineer and from her, I just got the feeling, you know, this is something that is just waiting to give us a curse, and we need to get it resolved, and somewhere down the line, we're gonna spend the money, so. And I know money's tight, but if it's a danger, and then it's also preventing them from doing things and having functions to the extent that they probably could have functions. And she did indicate it was probably only $15,000 or $20,000 a year that she was losing. But that potentially could also pay for the repairs if we bonded it, so. It's just, and again, I just don't wanna see something happen, and if we can avoid it, so.
But
Councilor Bacon?
CPA does like to do funding and matching, and if they can go to historic and CPA, I mean, that might be a good,
And she should talk to Don Sanders from MIFA. See if he's got anything he's Mr. Grant, get free money for the old Victory. He might know of something out there, He's been in that game for years.
Yeah, I, for some reason, I'm thinking she has talked to them.
Oh.
And I think they were trying to work something out, but I didn't think she had anything potentially coming out in the near future.
All right, so we'll table it.
Okay.
Item 9.
Make a motion, we take item 9 off the table.
So moved. Item 9 is an order from Counselor Bartley that the chain links fence at William Shard Playground be removed unless there's some rationale for keeping it in place. It cannot be, if it can't be removed, then please explain why, and at least replace it with something more attractive that doesn't become a magnet for plastic bags and litter.
So the fence was put in by DOT when they built 391. They considered that portion of Resnick Boulevard to be, that has a no access designation, which means you have to put in a barrier to prevent people from walking into the road. So like if you're driving on the highway, you see fences along the highway, that's because the highway is considered has a no access designation. I've talked with them. There is a process to have that designation removed, and the DPW, I can submit to have that removed, and if DOT agrees, then no access designation goes away, and we can remove the fence. In the meantime, we'll do a better job of cleaning up the litter and the plastic bags, because it does trap litter. I get calls from Councilor Bartley, I get calls from the mayor about the litter, and we'll just, DPW will try to stay on top of it, so it doesn't become an eyesore.
Counselor Bacon?
Thanks. Do you think it would be safe to take the fence down in that area from
Yeah,
your point of view?
I do. I mean, shared park is a passive park. It's not like there's people playing football or soccer
would be
in the park.
running.
They would run into Resnick, and there's other sidewalks that cross Resnick and that area that are not protected by a fence. And if you, as soon as you get out of this this no access zone, the sidewalk, bends, and now it's right along
The
Resnick.
same situation.
And there's no fence. It's even more of a hazard than where
Okay.
the sidewalk is, where it's protected by the fence.
All right, well,
Yeah.
if you can do that, that's great.
And then for the part, replace it with something more attractive. It's the state it's
Just
their
remove it.
fence, and they're not going to put in a picket fence or anything like that.
Right,
But
but
even removing the fence would make it
Right.
more attractive,
I
because
think
now
that
you're
was
gonna see
the-
the grass and the
I think that
park
was the
as opposed
first
to
goal, and the other
trash.
thing was backup. I'm just trying to follow up for Counselor Bartley,
Well, I
'cause
think
he
if
couldn't be here tonight.
So if we comply with it, he can file an order to have the DPW fight to have that designation removed. And-
Well,
Yeah, I'm going to
does he
do it
have to
anyways.
file
I don't
another
know, I
order,
mean-
or can you just do it?
I'm just going to do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
Yeah, great.
Timeline, ballpark?
It's the state, so
Okay.
hopefully by September.
Should we table it to September just to see what happened, or should we call it complied with, because you'll just
I
do
have
it when
full
you can?
faith in Mike.
Yeah, I say it's complied with, all
Um,
right. Expecting the fence to be removed by October. I'll give you an extra
Would
month.
that be fair?
All right, all in
I'll
favor?
do
Aye.
my best.
Is that reasonable?
Make a motion to take up item 10.
We'll see.
Item 10 is an order by Joe McGivern that the Conservation Commission, DPW, City Engineer come before the City Council to discuss the potential new access road for university apartments and the wetlands surrounding that potential road.
So this order's from 2015.
Yeah, I know. It's been tabled 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Since I've been here, I've heard no conversation about a new access road at University. And the people that I've talked to about this access road don't know anything about a new access road.
Now, I've tabled it 4 times, and I know, any conversations with Andrew Smith?
Yeah, there wasn't any.
Okay,
And it was a while ago. It's probably been over a year or so since I asked Andrew about this, and there wasn't any active plans for a new road.
Okay.
I make a motion that the order has been complied with, that there is no new access road and having problems with wetlands.
I think they were considering expanding an area of the apartment complex.
And they didn't do it.
And it was just too complicated.
We passed that, right?
Yep.
Make a motion, we take up item 12.
Item 12 is an order from Councilor Murphy, order that the Public Safety Committee meet with the superintendent to review the city's capacity regarding the problem of potholes. What would the city need to do to accelerate the pace of filling these sometimes dangerous situations?
And I talked a little bit with Mike already on it, and I know it's, there's some staffing capacity issues.
That's
as
the
well,
problem,
as
yeah.
well as other things. But, and I know it's been a rainy spring as well, so that hasn't helped.
Right.
But I don't know if there's a way that we can, and maybe you already do, where there's a consistent dedication to pothole repairs, like through a certain period, like where, I don't know exactly how it works. I know I see them on occasion, but then I'm looking, well, they're gonna be going to that street next, and then they're at their street. It's like they did that, then they're down doing that, and I know you get a lot of
Yeah.
complaints, because I filed a few myself. I know Linda filed some too.
So we do move around in the city.
Yeah.
So it's not like a linear progression through the city.
Yeah.
We try to fill the worst potholes on the busiest streets first. But it's a total staffing issue.
Yeah.
Our primary function is trash collection. And we make sure that we have enough staff on any given day to collect all of the trash. Yard waste tends to slip because we don't dedicate more staff just for yard waste, and sometimes recycling will even slip a day or two. But we try to make sure that at the end of the week, all the trash and recycling is collected for that week. And we do that by borrowing guys from the highway department to go over to the trash department. And then we have other jobs that need to get done day in, day out for our highway guys, and that's, having somebody at the yard waste facility to monitor that. We have 2 guys that are dedicated to the bays down at DPW, where you can drop off material. We've got a guy dedicated for the litter vac, who does that every morning. And then there's usually a sign crew. So that takes up 5 guys. There's the trash guys. There's certainly vacation time. There's an average of 2 guys off every day, just because of the number of guys we have, the amount of vacation they have. And you need at least 3 guys to man a patching crew. So after all of those needs are met, then we put people on a patching crew. And in the springtime, before we start to have grass grow and the vegetation grow, we're able to have 2 crews for patching. But now we're getting into a mowing season. So we have to make sure that the line of sight within the right of way is open for vehicles. And then other things pop up, like the river was rising a while ago, so we had to take our crews and install the flood control, the stop logs at certain locations, and that takes time, and that takes people away from being able to patch. So it's not, it's not an equipment problem. It's a staffing. Yeah. So if we had more staff,
Yeah.
we could definitely fill more potholes, fix more sidewalks, plant more trees.
So let me ask you this, because I know we do work with ROCA.
Right.
And so would that be something that they might be able to help you with a manpower in terms of doing some of that? I mean, obviously that'd be a different skill they'd be learning.
It would be a different skill that they'd be learning. I hadn't considered ROCA with that, just because they wouldn't be able to drive the trucks. But yeah, it might be.
I mean, that might
something
give
we
you
could-
a couple more times where you have enough people to be able to, if they were available to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just know, I mean, again, I know there are so many areas that have potholes, and part of it is obviously our streets are in need of more repairs, but, and I sent it to public safety rather than public service or DGR, because, I mean, every time when I see people with pothole situations, it's like, they don't care about the middle of the lane. It's like, I gotta go over there, and I'm going through that traffic light, and I'm going here, and the other one's coming this way, and I mean, it becomes especially in intersections where there's potholes, it becomes a pretty dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And I know you try to do it, I know we just talked about one that you took care of the other day, and I just came over Ray Street on my way, because I was gonna see if that was, but that's been done now too, so. But again, I think that if we can move the process, if it's possible to use ROCA, or the other thing I thought of is potentially people who might have retired and looking for a little extra income that would just come back on, once a week for 5 weeks or whatever to help out. I don't know, and I know what the cost, we'd have to pay for it, but, or some
Yeah.
kind of tax write-off or something, but something that would move the process along, which would make our roads better, which would keep people from having their tires get wrecked, and also people from getting in accidents because they're trying to avoid a pothole, so. Just a thought, and I don't have the answer, I'm just trying to come up with something.
Now, Mike, how many guys do you have at the DP, guys and girls, like, that are out on the cruise, so to speak?
On highway or
No, just
in
all together.
total?
I'm not talking about the people that are, the folks in the office or the bays. I'm just saying the guys out on the streets.
So altogether with parks, refuse and recycling, and highway, there's 37 guys.
How about, is that what number would be the optimal number for staffing for you?
I would say 42.
Has there ever been that many? Have we cut them? Or is it just?
You haven't cut them while I've been here, but I hear a story that there used to be 100 people.
Have you ever asked the mayor for more additional support, additional staff?
We have, like the tree climber. That position was a new position.
Mm-hmm.
It came at the cost of reducing our outside services.
Right, so that kind of, that.
Yeah, this year we're asking for another parking enforcement officer and a part-time clerk. And we're offsetting that by the not having the outside contractor manage parking. But no, as far as saying I need five more guys in the budget, I haven't asked for it. It has a cost,
Of course, okay.
It would be an extra $200,000, and when you're told to have a level budget, it's just not there.
I get it.
I mean, there are ways you could, the guys filling potholes could also work on the catch basin and manhole structures that are collapsing. So you could use the sewer fund.
I know that the bus barns and the yard waste is still free. Not that I'm looking to incur any more cost on the city of Hoyoke, but, I mean, it's, the people getting rid of the yard waste is a cost to us.
It is.
And I don't know, I'm not clear what other communities do with their yard waste, but, I mean, you know, we're manning the station, and then we gotta pay to actually have it cut up and disposed of.
Right. So other municipalities, it's free to the residents. If we didn't man it, we would wind up with a lot of
Landscapers,
contractors
yep.
coming in, and also people dumping TVs and mattresses and, yeah.
So do all the other surrounding communities have yard waste dumps?
So I know East Hampton, it's at their landfill.
Yep.
Springfield is at Bondi's. Chicopee is at their landfill.
All right, thank you.
Okay, make a motion, the order's been complied with.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Make a motion, we take up item 13.
So moved. Item 13 by Councilor Murphy, order that the DPW and the city engineer consider ways to improve the safety at pedestrian crosswalks at Beach in Hampshire and Pine and Sargent Streets. Is it possible to highlight the crosswalks as have been done on Lower Westfield Road for the bicycle lanes? Could a barrel with flashing light be placed on the center line?
Okay, so again, this was a request from the senior center director telling me that some of their people are parking, I guess, above on Hampshire Street, and then having a difficult time crossing on Beach and Hampshire Street. They also talked about Pine and Sargent Street, but Beach and Hampshire was their major concern. So, and I'm gonna total ignorance. What's an RRFB?
It's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
Oh.
So it's one of the things where at a crosswalk you press a button and the lights start flashing so the cars know someone wants to use the crosswalk.
Oh, okay. So we could install that there?
We could install that there. At that intersection on Beach Street, there's a stop line that's painted in the road, but there's no stop sign, and it's not a stop street
Right.
in ordinance.
Right.
And I really don't think it should be a stop, because you're on Beach. Beach is it's the main way through. Hampshire is definitely a side street. Hampshire has stop signs. But if there's cars parked close to the intersection and someone wants to get out into the road, a motorist is thinking about driving through and not necessarily looking for pedestrians.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of a device alerts the motorist that someone wants to cross the street there.
So would that be on both sides? How is that, I mean, is there like a button they push on both sides
Correct.
of the street?
Yeah.
And it would just,
It would flash for 12 seconds, 15 seconds, and let the
and is
people
it
cross.
like a yellow?
Yeah, an amber
Okay.
amber flashing. There's one.
Kind of like telling the driver slow down, someone's trying to cross.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not slow down, but stop, because pedestrians have the right of way in Massachusetts. So it says someone's going to use the crosswalk, and let them. At Save a Lot on South Street, there's one of these. Yeah.
That's cool.
So it's
On the
It does
table lot?
really get your attention.
yeah.
Okay.
It's similar to out by Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley. You know how they press
Yep.
the button and it
Okay,
lets
yeah.
you know that people want to cross the street.
Do
Okay.
we have those lying around, or is it something we gotta order?
We would have to order it. But that, that would be the solution that I would see
Okay.
for that.
Do you think that's possible by fall, or?
I can look in our budgets and see they're 12 to 15,000 each.
Just ask a question.
Councilor Bacon?
So how did the one on South Street get funded? Was that through the,
It's through
Complete streets?
CDBG.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, because of the area of the city.
Right.
Because you know I get called on Kane every other week.
Yeah.
Rectangular,
Rapid flashing beacon.
They cost $15,000, huh?
Yeah. They're solar powered, so we wouldn't have to power them.
So I gotta start a GoFundMe for Ward 5?
Yeah.
So if I were to tell them potentially we should have something maybe in mid to late fall, that's a good possibility?
Uh,
Or don't tell them anything?
I'd say let's see where
Okay,
we are budget-wise.
okay.
Or pending I don't know, we could ask for an appropriation. We could,
So would that be an area, that's also probably in a CDBG area, right?
yeah. Is
So-
the one on South Street, was part of the sidewalks. They redid the sidewalks there.
Yeah.
And that crossing went in at that time.
But I do think this is CDBG, yeah. so-
Yeah,
But can you look into, see if that's a possibility?
yeah, we can.
Because again, I know she's indicated there's been a few seniors that have really come very close to getting hit because there's nothing there, and then they have a hard time walking across, and people are just moving.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that was the primary area. And the other one I looked at, Sergeant and Pine, there are so few that are doing it. I'm not really that concerned about that, but that one on Hampshire and
Yeah, I think on Sargent and Pine, the crosswalks need to be repainted. I think they're older.
okay, if we can do that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, the order's been complied with, and that we are looking at potentially having rectangular rapid flashing beacons at beach in Hampshire. Oh, we got that down, huh?
All in favor?
Aye, and I make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion's adjourned, second, all in favor?
Aye, thank you, thanks, Dan.